Okay, welcome to the deep dive. You've given us some really fascinating material here. Excerpts from a book, Doctor Who Sanctuary.
That's right.
And our mission today, well, it's to dive into these pages, isn't it? To
Yep.
sort of unpack them and pull out the key bits of knowledge, the insights from what looks like well, a pretty intense mix of history and something else entirely.
Exactly. It's a collision, really. The sources throw us straight into this very specific historical period. Knights, intense religious conflict, violence.
Yeah.
But then almost immediately something completely different crashes in, something from, well, another time.
Right. A temporal displacement,
Yeah.
as the source puts it.
Yeah.
So we're going to follow this thread. Yeah. We'll explore the world described, the people fighting in it,
Mm-hmm. The politics, the religion.
the strange rivals,
Yeah.
this mystery that seems to unfold, and then, well, what sounds like a pretty dramatic ending.
Let's start with that historical scene, because the sources really paint a picture. You can almost feel it.
How so?
Well, it's described as this primitive world, right? Dark, chilly, no artificial light anywhere, just rolling countryside, muddy tracks, ancient roads.
Sounds rough.
Yeah, and this oppressive sky, like granite, apparently. And a constant biting wind. It feels, fundamentally harsh.
Unforgiving, both the land and the times, it sounds like. And who are the main players in this world?
Well, first up, there are these mysterious leaders. Figures on horseback, sharp cloaks with gold trim, fur caps.
Okay, powerful figures.
Definitely. And their conversation is revealing. They're talking about cardinal succession, ruthless political strategy, even plotting assassinations, targeting someone called Delsage.
Wow. Okay, so high-stakes intrigue.
Absolutely. Rewarding loyalty with, pouches of gold. But they're keeping their own hands clean. The source quotes them, that they can leave to us, meaning the violence.
A clear hierarchy, then. Power staying removed from the dirty work.
Starkly put, yeah. Then there's Guy de Carnac. He starts as a messenger, but he's actually a mercenary knight. Very capable.
Too capable.
Well, the sources mention his skill in handling pursuit, and his swordsmanship is described pretty bluntly, like he knocked heads off clean.
Yikes. Okay. But he's weary of it all.
Deeply weary. He finds the world strange and terrible. He's dreaming of getting out, one last campaign, maybe finding land somewhere far away beyond the Silk Road.
But he knows it's probably just a dream.
Yeah, he's realistic. He knows there's likely never been a carrot at the end of the stick for guys like him. He's cynical, but you sense that tiny bit of hope remains.
And how do others see him?
Well, there's a moment where Templars call him insolent for a mercenary. Tells you a lot about the social structure, doesn't it?
It really does. And looming over all this, you mentioned the church.
Oh, massively. The church and its agents are everywhere. The sources describe them burning villages, talking about heretics.
Framing it as righteous work.
Exactly. Good Christians expending efforts to set things right. But the descriptions of what they do are brutal.
Like what?
Soldiers cutting down men like ripe corn in a stable, villagers fleeing blue-cloaked horsemen, bodies left in the street for dogs. It's grim. Religious justification for terror, basically.
And specific figures driving this.
Yes, Louis de Citeaux and Guzman, they're the ones directing it, using scripture like vengeance is mine to, well, authorize it.
Guzman sounds particularly nasty.
He really does. The sources depict him as having this real zeal for it.
Yeah.
He wants to join the hunt. He whips a soldier just because he's roaring for de Carnac to be caught.
Charming.
And there's this chilling scene where he's overseeing torture, a prisoner, an iron chair heated by a furnace. The infernal light of it really hammers home how belief can be twisted.
It makes you think about belief versus fanaticism, absolutely.
Yeah,
And who are they hunting? The heretics?
that's right. Those hunted by the church, trying to find safety. The sources mention specific groups, Catharas, Waldensians, Jews, even some Moorish raiders trapped by the weather. It's a diverse mix.
Not just one group.
No. And while many profess nonviolence, interestingly, the sources also say some of their fighters are distressingly adept at infiltrating garrisons.
That's a contradiction. Pacifists who can fight effectively.
Seems so. It adds complexity. Their beliefs are touched on, too, this idea of an evil god, Rex Mundi, who made the material world, and a good god, Omor, who made spirits. Love is central.
Any specific practices mentioned?
Yeah, things like a Cathar New Year ceremony, the consolamentum, that's their kind of spiritual baptism or absolution. And there are hints of internal debates, too, among their leaders, the parfait, about things like having children or sexuality. Jeanne, one of the characters, reflects on another parfait's harsh views.
So they're not a monolith either. They have their own complexities.
Exactly, united mainly by being persecuted, and many of them seek refuge in one place, the Rock.
Ah, the fortress. Tell us about that.
It's formidable, high on a peak, sheer cliffs, just one narrow track up, and the entrance is supposedly hidden brilliantly, so simple that no one would think to look for it.
Clever. And inside.
It's a whole community geared for survival. Walls, the central area, a smithy, stables, libraries, storehouses, shelters crammed with refugees, even a bathhouse heated by the smithy.
It's like a proper sanctuary, but under pressure.
Definitely under pressure. Led by two parfaits, Gerard and Hughes. But supplies are low, there are wounded people everywhere, and they're trying desperately to train fighters for the inevitable attack. It's fragile.
Okay, so that sets the scene. A brutal medieval world, religious war, a hidden refuge.
A really vivid, grim reality, and then bang, something completely unexpected arrives.
The time travelers. This is where it gets really interesting. The collision of worlds.
Yeah. The source explains their ship, the TARDIS, hits a disturbance in the temporal environment.
The what now?
A time displacement field, apparently. It forces them to abandon ship. They have to leave the TARDIS for about a week while it sorts itself out.
Okay, so they need an escape pod, basically.
Pretty much. They use something called a jade pagoda. And apparently the doctor's instructions for getting to it are, well, famously complicated, almost nonsensical.
Classic Doctor. And who are the travelers?
It's the Doctor and Bernice Summerfield, Benny. Their arrival in this, gritty medieval setting is jarring.
Where do they land?
Southern end of the Eastern Pyrenees. Cold, probably wet, fitting the general mood. The Doctor hazards a guess about the time, muttering it's a little early for Ace. Ah, a little clue for fans there, perhaps.
Indeed. And Benny. How does she react to all this?
She's fascinating. Very pragmatic, dry sense of humor. If you can't laugh, what can you do? Is her attitude. Quite cynical about religion, too. Calls it just another hokey religion.
Which must contrast sharply with everyone else there.
Hugely. But she's not just cynical. She has this backstory. Growing up on Vander Prime, surviving a Dalek siege, her mother killed by them.
Daleks. Wow, so she understands persecution firsthand.
Exactly. She says they kill anyone who is different from them. It connects her directly to the heretics plate. And she's got tech.
Like what?
Metal scrapers she uses for lockpicking,
Yeah.
a thin insulating suit she's collecting water samples to analyze.
Analyzing medieval water for a paper.
Apparently so. And she has an LCD screen on her jacket sleeve. She's this mix of future tech and past trauma navigating this brutal history.
That's a compelling combination. Pragmatism, tech, empathy born from her own suffering, and the Doctor.
He's sort of in his element, right? The expert guide in weird situations. He's got his sonic screwdriver.
Of course. What does he do with it here?
At one point, disables horses with a high-pitched squeal, which sounds quite effective. Later uses it for investigation. He's also got a hypo for medical needs.
And his usual blagging.
Oh, yes. Claims to be Jean Fortagent de Gallifrey, a royal observer, poses as a wizard, Kukwaikwad, even a court jester. Whatever works.
Resourceful as ever.
But it's not just tricks. The sources show him reflecting deeply. He finds the human zeal for sectarian or patriotic murder not amusing at all.
No, I imagine not.
And he makes this really chilling connection. Funny thing. Human belief, he says. One moment it creates masterpieces, the next, wholesale genocide. He explicitly links Auschwitz, Jonestown, and the situation at the Rock.
Wow, that's heavy. Drawing a direct line from this medieval conflict to modern atrocities.
It really is. It elevates the stakes beyond just this one historical moment. So you have these two threads. The gritty medieval struggle and these displaced time travelers. How do they actually meet?
Well, their paths cross pretty quickly. The Doctor and Benny run into Guy de Carnac and a heretic, Edward. There's this nice little moment where Benny shares soup with Guy.
She sees something good in him, despite him being a mercenary.
Yeah, she knows his kindness. But things go south fast.
How so?
The Doctor gets captured, nabbed by Guzman and Louis de Citeau's forces, and taken off to Béziers.
Leaving Benny alone.
Well, she escapes, travels with some refugees, and eventually finds her way to the Rock, the fortress.
Okay, so they're separated. What happens to the Doctor in Béziers?
The sources are a bit vague on his escape, it's more implied. But we know he's imprisoned, deals with some incompetent jailers, Fleetbomb 4 even comments on their uselessness. But he gets out eventually.
Yeah, but while he's there, he explores the library, finds old texts, makes connections to other historical events like Richard the Lionheart in Jaffa, and crucially, finds a hidden passage. He's always investigating, even as a prisoner.
Resourceful, and Benny at the rock.
She integrates surprisingly well, introduces herself, gets the lay of the land, and she starts helping out with the wounded, using her future medical knowledge.
Like her inoculation.
Exactly. Broad-spectrum inoculations. She works alongside the local healers, Jean and Giselle, even mentions things like plasma chamber burns, which must have sounded utterly alien to them.
Bringing her unique skills to their fight. And Guy. Does he make it to the rock too?
Yes, he arrives separately, and he immediately starts using his military experience, training the defenders, spotting weaknesses in their defenses.
But Benny and Guy are now in the same place again. Does their connection grow?
It does. The sources describe them talking on the battlements about sleep, home, war, the big stuff and the small stuff.
Is there a romantic element?
It's hinted at. Guy uses language that makes Benny wonder if he's trying to court her. And we learn more about his own past trauma, the Crusades, seeking vengeance for someone named Iolande, accusations of desertion, night myths about an old enemy. He's complex.
A bond forming under siege conditions. Intense. But then there's a mystery.
Yes, right inside the rock. Parfait Gerard, one of the leaders, is found dead.
Suicide.
That's the initial assumption. Though there's also a confusing mention of a body being burned in Béziers, maybe a church practice. It muddies the water slightly.
But the doctor returns, having escaped Béziers.
He does, and he immediately doubts the suicide theory. Someone apparently heard a scream.
So he investigates.
Of course, using graphite or chalk dust from the library to check for fingerprints on the dagger found with Gerard.
Fingerprints. How did that work there?
Well, he lifts the print somehow, and compares it. He determines the hand on the dagger wasn't Gerard's, it was murder.
Okay, a murder mystery inside a besieged fortress. Gets complicated.
And it doesn't stop there. Someone else is found dead, hit on the head, then hanged.
Good grief, what's going on?
Jean, the healer, suspects old scores being settled, maybe a personal feuds erupting under the pressure.
So the doctor digs deeper.
Yeah. He suspects a spy, based on something Louis de Citeaux said back in Béziers, and he finds the skull.
The skull? What's that?
A really important relic for the Parfait. Finding it hidden in the library is significant. He keeps analyzing the fingerprints.
Comparing them.
Right. He notes Gerard's print is distinctive, 3% longer and thinner than the print on the murder weapon.
So who did it?
The investigation reveals two things. Robert, one of the defenders, was the spy for the church. But Jean, the healer Benny was working with, was the one who actually killed Gerard.
Really? Why?
The sources imply personal motives, perhaps tied to those old debts she mentioned. Internal betrayal, not just an outside threat. Hughes, the surviving Parfait leader, gets the skull back.
Wow. The enemy within, tangled up with their own history, all while the main army is outside. That leads us to the climax, doesn't it? The escape attempt.
Exactly. Things get really tense. Hughes tries negotiating with the church army. It's a ploy, a staged surrender.
What's the real plan?
To sneak refugees out in wagons to meet river merchants for supplies. Meanwhile, Guy is still training people. He plans to leave, but Benny asks him to check an outpost tower with her.
Delaying him, tying him to the rock's fate.
Precisely. And someone else, Joseph, accidentally discovers the planned escape route by the river while looking for Guy and Benny. More complications.
There was also that earlier escape scene you mentioned from Béziers.
Oh, right, where the doctor, Benny, and maybe Edward were chased by soldiers. The doctor used the sonic, did his great wizard act.
And Guy helped them then?
Guy and Edward helped them escape the village, yeah. Robert was there too, helping. It shows these connections were forming earlier. And apparently Benny was pretty ticked off that the doctor seemed annoyed about being rescued.
Okay, so back to the main escape from the rock. How do they prepare?
Disguises. The doctor gets a mail coif, Benny borrows some mail armor. They plan to take the skull relic with them in a box.
But the timing is bad.
Terrible. The church army attacks, the siege starts properly, Huysmans takes charge, starts interrogating prisoners. He's looking for the apothecary, probably Robert and that young messenger from the very beginning. He finds Giselle.
Oh no. And then another group arrives.
The Templars. They show up at the village where the escape group is trying to gather. They claim neutrality.
But they want something.
They want the skull. They offer safe passage to Montsegur in exchange for it.
Seems too good to be true.
It is. Hughes trusts them, agrees to go, and is immediately shot dead with an arrow.
Betrayal. Brutal.
A Templar just grabs the skull, their objective achieved, chaos erupts.
And the Doctor and Benny.
They have to scramble back to the rock, the Templars start shooting, the Doctor literally shoves Benny through an archway.
Which turns out to be
The TARDIS doors. Opening just in the nick of time. An arrow apparently hits the stone right where her head had been moments before.
terrifyingly close. The doors slam shut.
But what about Guy?
Guy, he goes back. Into the village square. Alone.
To create a diversion.
Yes. To give Benny and the Doctor those crucial seconds to get away, the sources describe it vividly. His fight against overwhelming odds, the soldier's bloodthirsty baying.
He gets injured.
Badly, chest and arm exploded with pain, but he fights like fury, breaks ankles, uses his dagger, fights with skill.
And his final act.
He sets fire to a building, the stairs, using oil and pitch, creates a barrier, buys them that time.
And his thoughts. You mentioned we get his thoughts.
Yeah, it's incredibly poignant. Pain fades, but fear arrives not for himself, but because he realizes he has something to live for now, Benny.
Oh, man.
He regrets it for a second, thinks maybe it's better to die together, but then finds this inner strength. His blood sings with sheer joy in that final selfless moment.
A warrior finding meaning in sacrifice. And Benny sees this. She tries to go back to help him, but the Doctor physically stops her. Pushes her through the TARDIS doors just as they close. Another arrow hits the closing door.
He saves her, but forces her to leave Guy behind. Brutal. So, what's the immediate aftermath for Benny inside the TARDIS?
She's numb, cold, shocked, grieving, can't even remember getting back inside. Her cynical side kicks in almost immediately, telling her Guy was likely cut to pieces in seconds.
Protecting herself from the raw pain.
Seems like it. And she recognizes the feeling, love only in hindsight, the pain of realizing what she's lost.
Does the Doctor offer any comfort or a solution?
He offers knowledge. He says they can go back after the fires die down so she can know for sure what happened to Guy.
The classic Doctor offer.
Yeah.
The truth, however painful. What does she choose?
She chooses not to know. It's a really profound moment.
Why?
She rationalizes it. He's from the past, technically dead for centuries anyway. But really the thought of seeing his body, it's too much. She prefers to imagine him surviving.
Keeping hope alive.
Yeah, picturing him sweeping through them, making a daring escape. She feels bound to that battlefield by his sacrifice and needs to break free. She consciously chooses uncertainty over a confirmation of his death. That phrase, "until I see a body," is key, and she chooses not to look.
Wow. Choosing belief over knowledge, in a way. That's powerful. So the sources clarify the fates of the others left behind.
Pretty clearly for most. Hughes, killed by the Templars. Jeanne, locked up in the rock storeroom, fate uncertain but likely grim. Robert, the spy, killed. Gerard, murdered earlier.
And the villains.
Louis de Citeaux is captured by Guzman's forces, facing torture but already plotting revenge. Guzman is in control of the rock, starting his interrogations and torture beginning with Giselle.
Grim. The Templars.
They leave with the skull, heading for Montsegur. The refugees and other parfaits at the rock are captured.
And Guy. Officially.
From Benny's perspective, and thus the narrative focused on her, his fate is ambiguous, unresolved on the ground. But she believes he died. The source leaves it there for her. Only the Doctor and Benny escape cleanly in the TARDIS.
A stark contrast. Their ability to leave, while everyone else is caught in the grinder of history.
Exactly. It highlights their unique position, but also the trauma they carry away.
Stepping through these sources. Wow, it's been quite a journey. Incredibly intense, seeing these worlds just smash into each other.
Absolutely. We went from this really visceral depiction of medieval warfare and belief
to time travel disruption. A murder mystery unfolding under siege.
and ending with desperate escapes, sacrifice, and just heartbreaking loss.
Yeah. And I think what these sources really gave us is insight into, well, courage against impossible odds, definitely, but also the scary side of belief, the cruelty it can drive.
And skepticism, too, through Benny. The clash of faith and doubt, different kinds of realities bumping up against each other, and those unexpected connections like Benny and Guy.
Connections that led to the ultimate sacrifice. It really forces you to look at characters grappling with these huge, impossible situations, making these choices.
Especially Benny's final choice. Knowing versus believing. Truth versus hope.
Yeah. So thinking about that, for you, listening after diving into this with us, how often do we face that kind of choice? Maybe on a smaller scale. Is it always better to chase down the hard truth, even if it hurts?
Or is there sometimes a value, maybe even a strength, in letting some things remain unknown, letting hope or imagination fill that space instead? Something to think about.